Howdy folks, Shell Presto DiBaggio here, awesome artist, remarkable writer, and undaunted luminary of my time. So I'm getting in on the mystery art box thing. I have a Scrawlrbox here. I know I don't do a lot of reviews on this channel, and I don't buy a lot of art supplies. I'm pretty comfortable with the supplies I have, so you'll often see me use the same ones and same brands over and over. Which there's nothing wrong with that. When you're comfortable with your art supplies, stick to your art supplies. But I like watching people open these boxes, and especially because there's a challenge inside, and I think the combination of having a challenge and limiting your art supplies is pretty interesting. So I figured, hey, let's try it out. So I'll be opening these, I'll be doing the challenge, and I will be giving you guys my thoughts on the supplies inside. So let's dig in. All right, so there's a magazine, which I will not look at because I want to scope out what's in here. There's the, there's a Posca logo on here, so perhaps these are Posca pens. This month's artist is SP0 from the UK. And he's working on a comic book called After the Robot Apocalypse. So, let's see. It certainly looks like it could have been done with Posca because they're very flat colors. I only own one Posca pen in white, so let's see if that is actually accurate. So, we've got... I have a very, my keen intuition tells me that we're going to be dealing with Posca pens because it's an A5 marker pad with 10 sheets. And let's see. Oh wow, this is really thick. Usually marker paper is advertised as really thin, but this feels like Bristol board. So it is by Art Gecko. And are there Posca pens inside? Let's see. We have the Scrawlrbox sticker. That's pretty cool. We have the ubiquitous Scrawlrbox sticker. And we do indeed have a bunch of Posca pens. So let's see what, oh, actually, let's look at the candy. Rhubarb and custard flavored drumstick. Okay, we do not have drumstick candies, so that's going to be interesting. Rhubarb is usually really tangy, and custard is usually not, so that'll be interesting to try. Let's see if I remember to review the candy, too. All right, we have a Stadler. Let's get rid of this. Alright, so we have a Stadler Mars Lumograph black pencil in 2B. That looks really dark and shiny for a 2B, so we'll see how that is. That's actually a lot darker than I'm used to drawing with. We've got a Faber-Castell Eco Pigment, ECC, so I'm going to say Echo. So it's a pigment liner, which means it's waterproof, good, maximum light fastness and acid-free. And then what color and size Poscas do we have here? Let's see. We've got 3 large ones, 2.5 millimeters. So we've got coral, lavender, and aqua green in the large size, the 2.5 millimeter, and it looks like we've got black and white in the 1.3 millimeter. And just out of curiosity, because I think I have it right here, what size Posca do I own? I own a much smaller one than that. I own a 0.7 millimeter. So, and I have only used this in one drawing so far, so I am still entirely new to them. As a matter of fact, it was the very last drawing that I did, so I have it right here. You can see I used it for the water effects on this character's face. Blackburn is getting accosted by Torrent in my Incorrigible Imps strip that runs in the Bexham's Bizarre Gaming magazine. You can learn more about my characters. I usually do modern day urban fantasy and sci-fi at ascensionepoch.com, or you can read my illustrated stories for free at heroicadventurefiction.com. So, relevant little plug there. These little water driplets were done with the white Posca that I already own. And that is my entire experience with Posca pens. So this is going to be interesting. Alright. These came in like this really stiff plastic. Or not stiff. Stiff plastic usually tears easily. This is like very stretchy, malleable plastic. It feels like it's not going to break, and then suddenly it does. Alright, I'm super excited. I want to look at what the challenge here is. And it is Can you see that? Character creation. That's super exciting. As you probably know if you're a regular on this channel. If you're new, you don't, but my husband and I write mostly superhero books together, and I am always creating characters. I actually made a list once, and I have created and drawn at least 75 characters for us so far. So creating another, not a problem. Alright. On to the shaking and priming. Alright. Now, it's worth mentioning that this little card says the Statler Mars Lumograph Black has a high percentage of carbon, so the pencil will deliver deep, rich blacks. And it has a matte finish, so that would explain why it looked so dark. And then the paper is a hybrid of bleed-proof marker paper and Bristol board. So I was right in saying it felt like that. And the Posca pens, it says they have a water-based pigment ink that is light, fast, water-resistant, and dries permanent. It says you can try them on wood, metals, glass, plastics, textiles, and more. And the other thing is it says that you can mix them with water if you want to try to blend them out or get lighter colors in the other magazine. So, let's start priming these puppies. Now they start with white tips and then you have to press them down, and I'm going to do multiple ones at once. And I'm going to do that on another piece of paper because that just feels like wasting paper horribly. Let's see. We'll do it here. If these poses look familiar to you, I was actually just practicing poses from a set of X-Men cards from the 90s. The images that they used on them were pretty popular at the time, so I do practice by looking at other artist poses and trying to break down how they, you know, turn the hips or move the arms or things like that. Alright, and since I only have 10 sheets of this paper, I feel like I'm wasting the paper to, I feel like I'm just wasting paper if I actually make a swatch card on one of those 10 sheets, but we're going to try it there because technically speaking you should swatch new supplies on the paper you're going to use. So, alright, so we have got, whoa, alright, this is super drippy. Now I have officially wasted this paper, so the Posca Black is just going nuts on me. Posca Black. Getting a little bit of squeaky sound out of this, and it's writing very, it almost looks like it's a little bit raised. We've got Posca White. So I never realized that these were water-based. I had always assumed that, oh, alright, so this tip is as large as it looks. It's gonna be pretty hard to make details with this. How big do I have to write to get an O and an A that doesn't have the centers filled in? Pretty big. Okay, so Posca Aqua. That's a much larger nib than I am used to using. Alright. Lavender. Now, I have seen other YouTubers use these, so I'm pretty sure that you can use the fine liner over top of them, which I think we are going to have to do. And we'll do a test of that, so I will lay down some of this color, and we'll see how the fine liner does over top of it. This paper is really, really smooth. It feels smoother even than, it feels even smoother than Bristol board. It actually feels, it's not coated, but it feels kind of like one step less waxy or plasticky than a comic book backer board. It's a very strange feeling to be drawing on this. Alright, so this is the Eco Pigment. That seems to be like kind of absorbing into the paper a bit. And this paper feels like it's going to be really weird with pencil, so let's see what this pencil's like. Yeah, pencil sort of feels like it's laying on top. It looks really nice on the paper though. It's filling in good. I want to do an eraser test on this, and I also want to see if the Posca is going to pick that up. So, need an eraser. We will try this eraser on it. Okay, so that does not erase clean on here. That's going to be a problem. Let's use my Miyabi eraser and see if it does any better. Yeah, this is pretty smeary. That's not particularly good. This is a white plastic eraser, like one of these. And this is supposed to be slightly different than a white plastic eraser. So yeah, that does not come up clean there. Let's see if it smears. It looks like it covers okay, so there's that. Let's try it with the white to be sure. It's picking up a little and smearing, so I'll just have to be careful with the white. And oh, these dry fast at least, and they do dry very, very matte. All right, and it doesn't feel like it's gumming up the pen, so that's good. All right. Actually, this pen is at a 0.6. It's a little thicker than I'm used to using too, but I can get a fairly thin line out of it if I try. All right, so character creation. This is going to be fun. Okay, since they called this a blend of marker paper, I was curious how it would actually do with markers, so I pulled out 2 of my Copics. It is not good for blending alcohol-based markers. It's obviously made for Posca paint pens. And it said it was meant for Posca paint pens, but like I said, they called it a hybrid of marker paper, and I'm just not getting it's almost impossible to blend, actually. If I use these on my normal paper, let's see, just to compare, this is Copic marker on plain cardstock. You get a much nicer blend out of that. You know, look at the soft transitions between the blush in the cheeks and this transparent area here. So yeah, much nicer blend than that on regular cardstock. This was done on bristle board and cut out. You can see a much nicer blend there. Especially the subtle shading on the arms and face, and the glowy look, especially on the shirt here, compared to that. And these were done with Copics on mixed media paper, and you can see just a much nicer blend there. So despite the Gecko Freestyle Pad A1 sheets saying that it is a blend for marker pens, definitely it's meant for use with paint markers and not alcohol-based markers. So just keep that in mind if you give it a shot. Okay, so you're going to get to see me do two pieces of art today, each with its ups and downs. If you frequent this channel, you know I'm mainly known for black and white ink drawings and nicely blended color drawings. You'll notice right off the bat that I'm penciling with an erasable colored pencil instead of the one provided. This is the only tool swap that I do, and none of these pencil lines appear in the finished art. But since the provided pencil smears when you erase it on this paper, and because it takes 2 coats of Posca marker to cover over the carbon graphite gray, it only made sense to use a lighter color for the sketch. These colored pencil lines don't erase completely from this paper either, at least not without damaging the sheen of the Poscas. So having remnants of pink and purple show through is not as jarring as having a dark gray show. But I did use the pencil in some planning sketches, so I'll show those later. Flat blocks of color are not my thing, and neither are paint markers. Alcohol markers, yes. Blendable water-soluble markers, yes. Watercolor, yes. But I'm no fan of acrylics, and even though these are water-based, they dry pretty much permanent. So these Posca markers are pretty much like my second least favorite painting medium, but in marker form. They act and dry and look quite similar to plaid or folk art paint, actually. You know, the cheap crafter's acrylic paint, the matte finish ones. I use those often when painting tabletop miniatures and terrain. That doesn't mean these aren't good or that they aren't the right supply for you or someone else, but they are definitely not the right supply for me when doing 2D art. So the theme is character creation, which is great. We always have stories sitting around that have a character or two I've never designed or drawn yet. Now, these colors are girly. The coral can actually read a bit like red-orange when used with the aqua alone, and I could have pulled off, say, a desert scene or something. But the addition of purple immediately makes the coral read as pink. Not that that's a bad thing, just that this is not a color palette that I'd often use when designing characters. So this piece uses inaccurate colors on a female character of ours. Meet Centerfold, a supermodel turned tank driver. She's a pastiche, that is, a character closely inspired by another similar character. Like how there are a million detective characters based on Sherlock Holmes, or every guy in leopard skin skivvies is a take on Tarzan. Here's looking at you, Kazar. My husband loves military science fiction and alternate history. He was working on an awesome G.I. Joe flavored story set after World War III, and this little lady needed to be realized. I don't know what her actual hair color will be, but victory rolls in her hair and Chuck Taylor sneakers seem to go well with the image of a beautiful woman making sure her vehicle is in tip-top condition for her upcoming mission. I favor highly detailed inking, and I knew I was going to have to compromise on that with these markers. Yes, I could draw on top of them, and that would be my only shading. These markers are 3 different colors, but tonally, if you reduce them to grayscale, they'd be really similar, so all shading needed to be done with hatching. But being detailed is hard when you have to color over your pencil lines with opaque paint, so I simplified. The nib sizes gave me trouble. These are big nibs for bold lines. Shading around her eyes and lips and fingers was hard as all get out. But large nibs are good for covering big areas, like the background. So that was a fair trade-off, right? Well, no. The Poscas give nice, smooth coverage for medium areas. Her shirt, her hair, the towel. But the huge area of the background I struggled with. You need small, close strokes to get flat coverage, at least on this paper. The paint flow couldn't keep up over a large area, even when I was priming the paint beforehand. And while you can go over areas that are dry, if the paint is in an in-between stage, if it's not 100% wet or 100% dry, it starts picking itself up and getting crackly or rolling up or moving around, like as if eraser shavings were in the paint. Since the paint flow couldn't keep up, things started to get streaky over the large area. And even once it dried, I had a hard time getting good coverage on some areas with a second coat. And it seemed like if I needed to add a third or fourth coat on this paper in particular, it seemed like it was just kind of stacking up and then getting a weird texture to it and even streaking more. It turned into a bit of a mess, and you can see that on some of the little tank icons that I add later. So I knew I couldn't do my original idea of a tank in the background with such wide nibs. They just couldn't do the detail. And I had doubts about a literal rundown gas station from the actual scene in the story too. So I went with a pattern of tank icons like the old Atari game Combat. I was disappointed with this overall, so much so that I started redrawing this image in my usual style with my usual tools. But I didn't think it was fair to write off the supplies after one go, and especially when I was obviously trying to be more detailed than the supplies would allow. So I whipped up another entirely different drawing. But before we get to that, here's the close-up. Note the nice flat coloring on the figure versus the uneven background. The coloring isn't precise, but the nibs were large. Posca does make smaller sizes. As noted, I did use the Staedtler Mars Lumograph pencil sketching centerfold before I started this finished piece. These were done with that 2B pencil and also a Staedtler Mars Lumograph HB pencil that I already owned. The 2B does indeed produce nice, rich blacks that I'd expect from a 2B pencil or maybe even a 3B without being hard to erase. It's a fine pencil, no complaints there. And might I just add, before we move to the next drawing, that if you like military science fiction and interesting female characters who aren't afraid of getting their hands dirty, my husband's short story, House of Refuge, might be up your alley. It's set in our Ascension Epoch universe and features illustrations by yours truly in the front and back of the book. It's available on Amazon in both ebook and print form. Okay, second attempt with Posca pens. If my normal style is comic bookish or sort of American animation-ish, well, I threw it right out the window for this piece. I thought a close-up of a character in a super simple anime style would work best with these markers. So, here we are. This doesn't follow the character creation prompt because, well, this character has already been drawn by yours truly a couple of times. I only have two characters who are close to fitting this color palette. West Side Siren, a neighborhood protector from our superhero adventure weird fiction mashup, Copper Knights and Granite Men, is one of them. But since I didn't have a yellow marker, I ruled her out. Anything but blonde for her just felt wrong. But this character conveniently actually does have green hair, at least when she's in costume. I'm drawing Ali Kazam, an antagonist who will appear in future East End Irregulars books. This witch's palette normally includes gold and dark blue, but I thought I could use the purple and coral as decent replacements. And I gotta say, I'm much happier with how this piece turned out than the first one. Now, I felt like part of the problem was the paper last time, which is ironic because they designed that paper specifically for use with the Posca pens. So I decided to try them on watercolor paper. This is just the Artist Loft brand from Michaels, their store brand, so it's nothing overly special or fancy. I did get much less streaking on the large areas of this paper, and nothing took more than 2 coats to cover, so that was a lot better. But I did get flaking here and there. Most of the flaking rubbed off when the paint dried and it was done, but it did leave slightly off-color blemishes on the final piece, so that wasn't cool. But I do have to say I enjoyed the coloring experience much more this time around, and I liked not having to put as many coats down with this paper. I will also say that the black Posca did give really nice lines at the end. I enjoyed that and the Staedtler pen, but they did snag on those eraser-like crumbs here and there. Not too badly, but if those crumbs weren't there, the lines would have been even smoother. All that said, I could have done either of these pieces with folk art craft acrylics and a small, medium, and large brush much faster than by using these particular markers in these particular widths. Which leads to the question, do I recommend these Posca paint pens? So, I think these pens would be good for folks who do word art or scripting or want to do color line art only with minor medium-sized fills. And especially people who want the control of a marker nib over the somewhat harder to use feel of a brush. Likewise, if you hate working with water and cleaning brushes, these markers will be good for you. But realize that you'll likely need to buy the smaller nibbed ones and the larger nibbed ones to get a full range of details and coverage. And you'll want to test these on different surfaces to figure out how best to proceed with the project that you want to do. I did rub the nibs on scrap paper a lot to get rolled paint shavings off of them, but I didn't need a paper towel or water at any point. I will say, too, that if you're the sort of person who doodles with Sharpies on, say, the backs of notebooks and book covers and the like, that these smell way less than Sharpies. I have a sensitive nose, and I used these in a small room with the windows closed. These have virtually no smell at all. I can see that being a major plus for some people. Plus, these are opaque and the Sharpies are transparent, so that's another thing to think about. However, I wouldn't use them for things that I normally use Sharpies for, such as labeling CDs that are going to go in CD players, because the paint is a little raised on hard surfaces when it dries. Now, I've obviously only used the white Poscas in 3 pieces now total, but I do seem to like them a lot for adding highlights on my other art, like when I color with Copics. The white ones will stay in my regular rotation, but the colored ones are going to land in my convention box for making price signs on colored cardstock. As for the Staedtler 2B pencil, I give that a thumbs up. And the Staedtler Echo Pigment Liner was a good and fine pen as well. It was pleasantly juicy for a fine liner, but I've only used it on 2 pieces, so I can't adequately compare it to my usual microns. Also, I did need to wipe off the Staedtler pen when I was using it with the Poscas because the paint kind of gummed it up a little. But that's more of a warning to watch out for shortening the lifespan of your fine liner by coloring on it on either not quite dry Posca pen or on too many layers of Posca pen. I don't think any other fine liner would have held up any better. Our troublesome witch, Ali Kazam here, won't appear until later East End Irregulars books, but you can read the exploits of Torrent, Corona, and other superheroes as they discover the eerie side of Pittsburgh by checking out our book After Dark on Amazon, available in both ebook and print book. Or you can start reading After Dark for free on heroicadventurefiction.com. All one word, no spaces. Oh, and I suppose the marker pad is okay if you're not going to cover large areas of it with the Posca markers, but that sort of feels like it misses the point. The pigment fine liner glided really nicely over it, so I guess if you've ever used Bristol board and wished it was glossier and slicker for your ink work, this paper may be for you, but personally, I'd really just rather use regular Bristol board in that instance. And the candy was pretty unique and, you know, good. Not like I need to order a ton more of it, but it was pleasant enough. It's not as tart as I expect rhubarb to be, but the custard taste came through pretty strongly, so it was unique and I liked it, and I'd probably pick another one up if I could find it at the local corner store. But like I said, not so great that I'd import it. Okay, folks. I hope y'all enjoyed that little venture into places I never go with my art. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below. I do have another box or 3 to scope out. I ended up getting a backlog of them after the Dauntless RPG zine took over my life for a while there. Don't start ordering subscription boxes when you have a Kickstarter going on. But whether I resubscribe to Scrawlrbox will depend on whether you fine folks want to put me through the Scrawlrbox challenge again. And if you found my struggles amusing, please reshare this video for your online friends to scope out too. And don't forget to check out heroicadventurefiction.com for some great free stories featuring our colorful and charismatic characters too. Most importantly though, have an awesome day. Presto, over and out.